I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this, but here I am trying to make sense of everything. My wife Emily and I had been together for about 8 years. We met in college, got married right after, and for the most part I thought we had a solid, normal life. We had our ups and downs, sure, but nothing that seemed insurmountable. We owned a small tech company together, and I was proud of how much it had grown. Things felt stable, predictable, until they suddenly weren't. It all started a few months ago. I began noticing little things. Emily was more distant, more irritable. She'd be on her phone more often, sometimes sneaking off into another room when she thought I wasn't looking. She'd cancel plans with me at the last minute or get defensive when I asked what was wrong. I brushed it off initially, thinking she was stressed out with work or maybe having some kind of midlife crisis. But then I started noticing her lying about things, small stuff at first, like where she'd been or who she'd been talking to. I'd find her deleting messages, hiding her phone, or giving me half-truths that didn't add up. It wasn't just her behavior that changed. I also started catching glimpses of her in ways that made me uncomfortable. Once I saw her taking a weird long bathroom break during dinner, and I noticed she was texting someone. When I looked over her shoulder, I saw a message that made my stomach sink. It was from some guy named Tyler, and it was flirty, filled with innuendos and plans to meet up. I didn't say anything right away, but I kept that in mind. Then came more signs. Sometimes she'd get a little too defensive when I asked about her whereabouts. Other times she'd deny everything, calling me paranoid or jealous. But I knew better. I just didn't have concrete proof yet. The big turning point came unexpectedly. I was reviewing some of the security footage at work, something I did sometimes when I suspected a leak or breach. Our company's security system kept logs of all entries and exits, and I wanted to check if anyone had been sneaking into the office after hours. But as I watched the footage, I saw something that hit me like a punch to the gut. It wasn't just the usual late-night meetings or deliveries. It was Emily leaving our house at midnight, getting into a sleek black car I didn't recognize. She looked nervous, glancing around as if she was trying not to be seen. That was one thing, the timing was off. She had told me she was working late at her sister. But this was different. Then I saw her meeting someone, a guy I'd never seen before. Tall blonde with a confident swagger I immediately recognized as Tyler's son, Jake. That's when it clicked. All the pieces came rushing in. The late nights, the secrecy, the texts. It wasn't just emotional, she was sleeping with him. I felt my stomach turn cold. My mind raced. How long? How deep? Was this just sex or was there something more? I couldn't believe it. My wife was cheating on me with a kid I knew, her boss's son. It was a betrayal that cut deeper than I could have ever expected. And honestly, I felt like I'd been punched in the chest. The trust I had, the life I thought we built, everything was falling apart in that moment. I spent the next few days in a fog replaying that footage over and over. Every time I saw Emily sneak out at midnight or meet Jake in that parking lot, a surge of anger and hurt washed over me. How could she do this? After everything we had been through, she was out there lying, sneaking around, cheating behind my back. It wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It felt like my entire world was crumbling. I tried to talk to her, but every time I brought it up, she'd spin some bullshit excuse. She told me she was working late or she said I was being paranoid. When I pressed her further, she'd get bitchy, dismissive, and say I was overreacting. "You're just jealous," she snapped at me once. "You're imagining things." But I knew better. I saw the texts, the late-night meetings, the secretive phone calls, and the way she lied so easily. It was all just part of her game. That night I couldn't sleep. I stayed up, staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out my next move. I knew confronting her wouldn't be easy, especially since she was so good at lying and twisting everything around. But I also knew I couldn't keep living like this in the dark, pretending everything was normal. I needed answers, and I needed to see if I could salvage whatever was left of my dignity. The next morning, I decided to check her phone. I knew it was risky. She'd have a fit if she found out I was snooping, but I couldn't resist. I needed to see the truth with my own eyes. I grabbed her phone when she was in the shower, unlocked it, and started scrolling through her messages. My hands trembled as I searched for any proof I could find. And then I saw it. A string of texts between her and Jake, explicit and unmistakably about their sex life. There were mentions of late-night meetings, secret encounters, and references to things they did together. I read her talking about how hot he was, how much she loved the thrill of sneaking around. She described their hookups in detail, even mentioning specific places they'd gone. I couldn't believe what I was reading. My wife, the woman I loved, was out there fucking some kid I barely knew. And she was lying to my face about it all. I felt like I'd been punched again, this time in the stomach. I closed her phone quickly, my mind racing. How long had this been going on? Was it just sex, or was there something deeper? Did she love him? Did she even care about me anymore? All these questions kept spinning in my head, and I knew I had to confront her. But I also knew I needed to be strategic. I couldn't just blow up and lose control. I had to plan my next move carefully. If she thought I was naive or blind, she'd keep her game going. I needed to catch her in the act, or at least get her to admit it. That afternoon, I called a meeting with my lawyer. I wanted to start thinking about what I was going to do. I was furious, hurt, and feeling more betrayed than I'd ever felt in my life. But underneath it all, there was this burning desire for revenge. Not just to hurt her, but to make her feel the pain she'd inflicted on me. I'd been a good husband. I'd worked hard, supported her, trusted her. And she threw it all away for a quick fuck with some punk kid. I knew. I couldn't just walk away without making her regret it. I had to find a way to turn this into my advantage. I'd wait, gather evidence, and then strike back. The thought of revenge gave me a strange sense of calm amidst the chaos. It was the only thing keeping me grounded. I couldn't let her get away with this. Not without consequences. She needed to understand what she'd lost and what she'd done to me. The days that followed were like a whirlwind. I stayed quiet, watching her every move, waiting for the right moment. I wasn't about to let her see I knew everything, at least not yet. Instead, I played it cool, acting like nothing was wrong, but inside I was boiling. Every time I saw her brush her hair or put on that fake, bitchy smirk, I felt a mix of disgust and fury. She was so good at pretending everything was fine, but I could see the cracks in her facade. Her eyes gave her away sometimes, nervous glances, the way she avoided my gaze, the way she'd clutch her phone like it was a lifeline. One evening, I came home early from work, about to catch her. In the act, I set up a little hidden camera in our living room, nothing fancy, just enough to catch her if she tried to text or talk to Jake. I knew she'd try to cover her tracks, but I wanted proof. I needed her to slip up again so I could confront her with hard evidence. That night, I waited, heartbeat pounding, watching the footage on my phone. Sure enough, she arrived around midnight. She slipped into the house quietly, trying not to make a sound. I saw her tiptoe into the bedroom, and I kept recording. Then she took out her phone and started texting. I saw the screen light up with messages from Jake, calling her babe, telling her how much he missed her, how he couldn't wait to see her again. It was explicit, raw, everything I needed to see to confirm what I already knew. And then she did something else. She took her clothes off in front of the camera, and I saw her in her bra and panties, getting into bed with her phone next to her. It was like watching a sick, twisted movie. I felt my stomach twist again, this time with a mix of heartbreak and rage. She was really doing it, fooling me, betraying everything we'd built with some kid. I wanted to scream, to tear the house apart, but I stayed calm. I had what I needed. The next day, I sat her down in the living room. She was still acting like she had no idea what I was talking about, still throwing her lies and bitchy attitude around. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I pulled out my phone and I played the footage for her, showing her in clear, unedited detail. Her face froze and her eyes widened like she'd just been caught in the act. She stammered, trying to deny it, saying it was just sex, that it didn't mean anything. She called me paranoid, accused me of spying on her out of jealousy, but I cut her off. "You've been cheating on me with Jake, haven't you?" I asked, voice cold and steady. She looked like a cornered rat, then finally snapped back with her usual bitchiness. "Whatever, Scott, this isn't your business. I did what I had to do. You're just jealous because I'm better at sex than you ever were. That's..." When I saw her true colors, she's a manipulative, lying bitch who thought she could get away with everything just because she was good at pretending. The emotional impact hit me hard: anger, sadness, disappointment. I felt this crushing weight inside, realizing I had been blind for so long. I loved her, I really did, but she threw everything away for some stupid fling. I wanted to scream at her to make her feel as worthless as I felt right then. But I didn't. Instead, I told her I needed some time to think and I walked out of the house, leaving her standing there, furious and defiant. I knew this was only the beginning. I had the evidence, and now I had to decide what to do next, whether to fight for my marriage or finally cut my losses. The days after that confrontation were some of the darkest I've ever experienced. I stayed out of the house as much as possible, not because I was afraid she'd do something crazy, but because I couldn't stand to look at her. Seeing her bitchy smirk or her dismissive attitude made me physically ill. I spent hours poring over the footage, going over every detail, trying to understand how I'd been so blind. How could she lie so convincingly? How did I miss all the signs? I also made calls to a divorce lawyer. I knew that once I had the proof, there was no way I was staying with her. But I wasn't rushing. No, I wanted her to realize she'd lost everything, and I also needed time to prepare myself emotionally. I couldn't afford to act impulsively. My mind kept going back to that moment when I first saw her sneaking out that night. It was like a sick, slow-motion nightmare that I couldn't wake up from. Meanwhile, Emily's attitude only got bitchier. She started throwing her weight around, acting like she was the queen of everything. She'd snap at me over little things, accuse me of being paranoid, and dismiss my concerns like I was nothing. It was obvious she thought she could keep playing her game, that I'd just accept her lies and move on. But I wasn't about to let her have the last word. I had the evidence now, and I was planning my next move carefully. One evening, she came home from work acting even more arrogant than usual, trying to act like she was still in control. I was sitting on the couch, calm but cold, and she tried to start an argument. "You know, Scott," she sneered, "you're just jealous because I still look good and you're boring in bed. Maybe if you'd stop being so insecure, we wouldn't be in this mess." That was her typical tactic, trying to make me feel small, like I was the problem. But I didn't rise to her bait. Instead, I looked at her and said, "You think you're clever, huh? But I've got everything on camera. Every lie, every sneaky night, every fuck you had with Jake." Her face went white for a second, then she started to panic. That moment was a turning point. I knew she realized I wasn't bluffing anymore. I had her in a corner, and her bitchy mask was cracking. I told her I was done playing her game, that I was filing for divorce, and that she'd better get her shit together. She tried to deny everything, calling me crazy, saying I was trying to ruin her life, but I just shrugged. I had everything I needed. The emotional toll was terrible. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and lost. It was like my whole foundation had been shattered. My trust was gone, replaced with a bitter resolve to end this nightmare. It was hard to swallow, knowing I had been so blind, so trusting, only to be betrayed by the person I loved most. But deep down, I knew I couldn't stay with her, not after all this. I had to do what was right for me, even if it meant walking away from everything I'd built. I decided I'd give her one last chance to come clean, to tell me everything. But I knew she wouldn't. She'd never admit to anything unless she was forced. So I sat her down again with the evidence on the table and told her it was over, that I was leaving, that I wasn't going to live in this house with her anymore, knowing what she'd done. She exploded, calling me every name under the sun, saying I was a control freak, a jealous idiot, that she'd never loved Jake, and that I was just being paranoid. But I didn't care anymore. I'd heard enough lies. I just wanted her gone, out of my life for good. The rage and heartbreak had turned into cold resolve. I couldn't fix this, so I was going to end it on my terms. The day I moved out was one of the hardest days of my life, but also one of the most freeing. I packed my bags quietly, trying not to make a scene, even though every part of me was screaming for her to see what she'd lost. I remember her standing in the doorway, still trying to look bitchy and defiant, but her eyes looked desperate. She kept insisting I was overreacting, that I was crazy to think she'd do such a thing, and that she still loved me. I just stared at her and said, "You lost me, Emily. You betrayed everything we had. I don't trust you anymore, and I don't want to be with someone who lies and cheats." When I left, I felt a mixture of relief and deep sadness. It was like shedding a skin I'd been wearing for years, and I wasn't sure who I was without her. The house felt empty, cold, and silent. I kept replaying everything, the secret meetings, her lies, that damn footage. It was haunting. But I also knew that staying would only mean more pain, more lies, more betrayal. I had to get out, rebuild, and find myself again. In the weeks that followed, I threw myself into work, and I started therapy to process the betrayal. I realized that I'd been blinded by love, but now I saw her for what she truly was, a manipulative, selfish woman who valued her thrill over everything else. I also learned that revenge, in a way, was already happening. I had taken control of the situation by gathering evidence, exposing her lies, and walking away with my dignity intact. That thought gave me some peace, even amid the pain. What shocked me the most was how quickly she moved on. Not long after I moved out, she was already posting on social media, pretending everything was fine, acting like she didn't give a damn. She kept telling mutual friends I was just overreacting, that I was jealous and insecure. But I knew better. I knew the truth, and I knew she was trying to rewrite history. All I could do was focus on myself, my sanity, and rebuilding my life from the wreckage. I won't lie, it's been a brutal lesson. I trusted the wrong person, and it cost me everything I thought was stable. But I also learned a lot about myself. I learned that I'm stronger than I thought, that I can survive betrayal and heartbreak, and that sometimes you just have to cut your losses and walk away. I've started dating again, slowly, cautiously, not because I trust women easily anymore, but because I refuse to be haunted by what she did. The biggest thing I want to tell anyone reading this: don't ever ignore the signs. When someone shows you who they truly are, whether it's lying, cheating, or just being dismissive, believe them. Trust your gut. Once that trust is broken, it's almost impossible to repair. And when you discover the betrayal, don't beat yourself up thinking you're responsible. It's their fault, and you deserve better. I still think about her sometimes, especially when I pass that old house or see something that reminds me of her. But now I think about what's next. I'm rebuilding my life piece by piece. And honestly, it's better this way. I'm finally free from the lies, from the betrayal, from the bitchy attitude, and I know I'll come out stronger. On the other side, looking back now, I realize how much this whole ordeal changed me. At first, I was crushed, completely shattered by her betrayal. It tore through every part of me, leaving me questioning everything I thought I knew about love, trust, and loyalty. But over time, I also found a strange sense of clarity. I saw her true colors, and I understood that I deserved someone who wouldn't lie, cheat, and manipulate me just for a thrill. That realization was a hard pill to swallow, but it was necessary. I've come to accept that sometimes the best revenge is simply walking away and choosing to rebuild your life on your own terms. I don't harbor hatred anymore, just a scar that reminds me to be more cautious in the future. I've learned to trust myself again, to listen to the warning signs, and most importantly, to value my own happiness over someone else's lies. It's been a long, painful journey, but I wouldn't trade it for anything because it forced me to grow. Now, I focus on my business, on my personal growth, and on rebuilding my confidence. I've cut out all the toxic people in my life who enabled her or tried to justify her actions. I've learned that vengeance isn't about revenge for revenge's sake. It's about protecting yourself from further harm, reclaiming your dignity, and moving forward stronger. I refuse to let her define me or control my story anymore. I'm finally in control, and that feels good. For anyone out there dealing with betrayal, I want you to know this. It hurts, it's brutal, and it feels like your world is ending. But it's also an opportunity. An opportunity to realize your worth, to cut ties with toxicity, and to start fresh. Trust is precious, but sometimes it's worth losing if it means you get to keep your integrity intact. Don't stay in a situation where you're constantly second-guessing your instincts or doubting your value. Get out, heal, and learn to love yourself again. If I could give a piece of advice, don't dwell on the past. Don't let it consume you. Instead, focus on what's ahead. There's so much ahead: new opportunities, new relationships, new beginnings. If you're willing to take that first step. I still have scars, sure, but they're reminders of how far I've come. And honestly, I feel a lot stronger now. The betrayal was a blow, but it wasn't the end of my story. It's just the beginning of a new chapter, one where I choose myself every time.